Okay, so in this session we're going to use the two spiky balls and we're going to do a little bit to try and rehydrate the tissue around the front of the hips, the front of the pelvis, and also to get a little bit of length down through the front of the thighs and also a little bit of upper body extension. So when we're lying on the mat in our prone position, we're going to have the spiky balls placed underneath the kind of the knobbly ASIS, those hard bits of the hips, the front of the pelvis. So make sure they're not too far into the groin area. Like I say, you want them right underneath the front of the hip bones. So just going to come down to lying and just place the spiky balls in at the front of the hips on each side. And you should hopefully feel quite supported in that position. The legs are going to be about a fist distance apart or thereabouts, and you can just let the head rest down on the back of the hands. So to start with, just allow the body to settle onto the mat for a moment and onto the spiky balls. And in this position, just think of the breath wide into the sides and into the back of the body. So just allow gravity to take over, let everything settle. Lovely, good. And then from there, just tuck your toes under. Lift your knees away from the floor and just take it into a little rock. You can let the head lift away from the back of the hands as well. Just take it into a little rock of the body front to back and just find a rhythm that feels comfortable for you. So it's just again to find a little bit of sense of elasticity within the body, a little bit of springiness. Lovely, good. And then when you're ready to just still that movement, let the toes relax, let the head rest down again and let the body settle for a moment. Then we're going to take one of the spiky balls out from underneath the hips, and what you want to do is start with the ball in place on the side where you are more mobile, so perhaps on the side where you've had a bit less injury, so maybe starting with the ball on the left side if it's the right leg that's been a bit more challenged, for example. And just again let the head rest down, so the pelvis will be slightly off balance and hopefully that's comfortable enough. We're going to work on the side where the ball is in place, and keeping the pelvis and the hip nice and heavy, we're just going to pick that leg up from the top of the back of the thigh, lower the leg back down. So we're not thinking about how high we lift, we're trying to find that sense of space in the body. So almost like you're reaching the toes towards the wall behind you. Upper body stays nice and settled. So it's like we're squeezing a sponge at the front of the hip. We lift the leg up, we lower back down, let it settle, lift the leg up, lower back down. On that next one, we're going to keep the leg lifted if comfortable for you. Bend the knee, bring the foot back towards the bottom, extend the leg away. And again, we bend the knee and then we lengthen. So just see how that feels. If it feels a little bit too much, keeping the thigh lifted, you can let the knee rest down and the thigh rest down onto the mat. But if possible, try and keep it lifted because it's going to create a little bit more activation in and around the hip extensors. And on that next one, we're going to let the knee bend and then now let the thigh rest down onto the mat. So we're heavy with the leg. Think of your lower leg a little bit like a windscreen wiper and try and allow that just to move from side to side. But just watch that you're not tugging into the pelvis. The pelvis wants to stay pretty stable and resting on that ball. So it's to create a little bit of internal external rotation of the thigh bone in the hip socket. And then rather than taking it side to side, take it into a little lower leg circle. So we're going to do about 5 each way. Again, it doesn't have to be a huge movement. Take it back in the other direction. And then when you've done those 5 and 5, take the ball away, let the pelvis settle, lengthen the leg out and just see how that feels compared to the other side. Hopefully what you should feel is that that side feels a little bit closer to the mat, where we've just sort of got that little bit of hydration and softening of the tissue. When you're ready to, we're going to bring the ball in on the other side. So again, make sure it's not pressing into the groin area. You want it underneath the front of the hip bone, so under the knobbly bit. And then again, let the pelvis settle on the ball, and we start again on this side. So again, picking that leg up from the top of the back of the thigh, think of reaching the toes towards the wall behind you. So again, trying to find space rather than about how high you lift. So again, that squeezing of the sponge to try and rehydrate the tissue. On that next one, keep the leg lifted if you can. Again, knee bend, lengthen the leg away, knee bend, lengthen away. And again, if it feels a little bit too much, keeping the thigh lifted, you can let the thigh and the leg just rest down onto the mat. Do exactly the same, but keeping that leg lifted, like I say, just gets a little bit more work into the hip extensors, but it's also going to create a little bit more length down through the front of the thigh and the front of the hip. On that next one, keep the knee bent. Now let the thigh settle, and again back to that little windscreen wiper from side to side, so the pelvis stays steady and it's the thigh bone that's just rotating within the hip socket. Make sure you're not tugging into it, so again, just find a little bit of sense of softness to that movement. And then take it into that little circle around of the lower leg. So again, this will create a little bit of internal, external rotation around the hip. And back the other way, so about 5 each way. When you've done those 5 and 5, take the ball out, let the pelvis settle, just see how that feels there. Hopefully feels a little bit more even through the front of the hips, and that you've got that sense of connecting the hip bones and the pubic bone to the mat. If it's comfortable for you, and it's not for everyone, we're going to bring our spiky ball, just one of them, in underneath the sternum. So again, find that bony place. Bring the hands nice and wide, so the hands are in line with the head, and if you are comfortable on that ball, or comfortable enough, it'll perhaps be the forehead down on the mat rather than the tip of the nose. So again, allow the body to settle. Think of the breath wide into the sides, into the back of the body. Make sure you don't feel like you're holding any tension through the shoulders. Really find that space there. We're going to take it into a little cobra movement. So a small lift of the forehead, a little nod forward along the length of the mat, and then lifting the breastbone. So the back of the neck stays really nice and long, and then we release, coming back down. Small lift, small nod, that lift of the breastbone. Imagine you're following a line along the mat and just slightly along the floor, maybe very slightly up the wall in front of you. As you come up, press down through the hands. Think of pulling them towards you very slightly. Finds a little bit of opposition in the body. And at the same time, keeping the lower portion of the body heavy, think that you're gently reaching the toes towards the wall behind you, so that you're not kind of just collapsed down on the mat through the front of the body. We're trying to find that elongation, not only through the back line of the body and the strength as well, but also through the front line of the body as well. Small lift, small nod, that lift of the breastbone. On that next one, we're going to hold that lift once you're there. Back of the neck stays long. Take it into a slow rotation. Turn the head to look towards one hand or forearm, through centre to the other side. Make sure that the jaw is nice and relaxed. And then we can add to that. As you turn to look towards one side, glance a little bit more over your shoulder, and you can bend the opposite knee. So it's like you're trying to look towards the sole of the foot. Keep that lift and that extension of the body. Like I say, back of the neck is nice and long. It's going to get a little bit more length down through the front of the thigh, the front of the hip, as you bend the knee. Keep that sense of lifting. I'll do one more each side. Just make sure you're not kind of tweaking into the neck at all. Don't push through the range. Come back to centre, let the upper body rest down, and then just carefully take a press back towards the heels. So just bring the knees forward. The knees are going to have space between them, the feet are wide, and either the arms can lengthen along the mat, or you can just let the head rest down on the back of the hands, whatever's comfortable for you. In that position, you could just take it into a little rock of your pelvis from side to side, just getting a little bit of release around the low back area. And then just let the body settle there for a moment. Bring the arms forward once more. We're going to take it into a little wave-like motion forward. So the forehead is down on the mat. We're going to lift the hips. You're going to roll through the spine. As you come forward, you can allow the shins to lift. The breastbone shines forward. So we want to think here, proud chest, nice and strong through the arms, supporting through our centre. To return, the chin comes towards the chest. We roll through the spine. We sit back towards the heels, the arms nice and long. So the hips lift as you start to roll through. The shins can lift as well. Like I say, proud chest, strong through the arms, breastbone shines forward, chin to the chest. Roll back through. So like I say, initiate with the head on the return. The hips initiate the movement as you roll forward. And the head, chin to the chest, initiates the movement as you sit back. We're going to do one last one here. Hips lift, roll through the spine, shins lift so the big toes are just gently connected. And again, chin to the chest, roll back through the spine, sit back towards the heels, and then you can just roll yourself up to sitting. And that's you all done, and I hope you enjoyed that session.